Welcome, folks, to episode 40 of the No Conference for Old Men podcast, the podcast where three old guys are talking Houston Cougars basketball with a bit of Big 12 coverage added in as well, and proud members of the GoCoogs.com network, the undisputed number one Houston Cougars content provider. We're back again with all three old men, Tom Lidiak, former coach, Bill Walker, former player, and myself, Steve Chang, analytics guy, for this 40th episode. Well, it's another week, and our Houston Cougars go 2-0 again and now sit alone atop the Big 12 standings, as the Cougars just squeaked by a very athletic and inspired UCF team, 69-68 in Orlando, and then turned around for a 70-36 thrashing of Utah at home after a one-day delay due to the crazy snowy conditions in Houston. We now head into arguably the toughest three-game stretch of the season at KU, then at West Virginia, which we'll both preview today, with a return home game versus Texas Tech afterwards. We're going to go through these games quickly today with 3 to review, 2 to preview, and then jump into a what we call State of the Big 12 after 7 games discussion this week, where we'll highlight some surprising teams so far, both good and bad, as well as whether UH being on top of the Big 12 standings means as much this season, given the Big 12's perceived weakness. So let's get into it, guys. In looking at our 2 Big 12 wins this week, let's begin with post-game analyses of the nail-biting 69-68 win in Orlando, as well as the 70-36 surprising cakewalk last night over Utah, where every kid got to play extended minutes. Let's start with you first, Tom. What were some of the things you saw from a coach's perspective in both of the games?
Well, the first thing that jumped off the TV to me was UCF's intensity. They were playing it like it was their Super Bowl. They were hitting difficult shots. I mean, just high energy. It was a great crowd at UCF. You know, when the Houston Cougars come to town, they always seem to be ready. But you know, just like a boxing match, they threw their haymakers first. They kind of shot their wad in the first half, and we didn't hit the canvas. And we were down by, it was like 38-30 at half. It was a very physical game, and it was one of the few times that I thought the whistle might have favored UCF more than us. And it's because I think they were the aggressor. We were kind of back on our heels. LJ, E-Man had a tough shooting first half. They were ice cold, but in true championship fashion, we came out and ground out a win. Super out of bounds play at the end for Jawan to get the. We're down by 1. Kudos also to Milos that made the inbounds pass.
Yep.
I think it was Darius Johnson for UCF. You know, he was up there on the ball like a wild man, and you know, Uzan, it was a little bit nuanced pass. You know, he made a couple of subtle fakes and got the ball to Juwan rather than having the ball tipped. If you notice, I think UCF had the ball for a last second shot, and JoJo's on the ball, and he got his finger on it. So I don't think you can underestimate the impact the pass that Milos made to Juwan. We had a play set up where it could have gone to LJ. It could have gone to E-Man. Tugler was another guy that went to the backside, but just a clutch shot by Juwan. The kind of shots you figure a 6-year guy can make, but just a tough game. I mean, if UCF played the way all year like they play against us, they'd probably be winning a lot more games than they do, but then they come back, and Iowa State, a game later, Iowa State scores 108 on them. So
it's crazy.
I think that game probably took a lot out of UCF.
Yeah, no kidding. How about the Utah game, Tom?
Okay, Utah game. It's hard to put into words how dominant our defense was. We held them to 36 points, and just put it in perspective, Kelvin basically emptied the bench with a little over 7 minutes left. I think it was still on the floor. I know we had Cordelius, we had Mercy. It might have been Malik, and I think the other one was Terrence. But that was with over 7 minutes left. I can't remember Kelvin ever emptying a bench that early in the game, and still they only scored 36 points. I'm sure you have all the stats and all the metrics and all that, but It was just a steamroll. I think Utah was in the game for about 2 minutes, and then it was an avalanche.
Yeah.
But just crazy off the charts defense. I mean, I don't think we beat American Conference teams like this. I know we had lots of
No.
blowouts and all that, but I don't remember us in American really holding teams to these like historical levels.
No, I'll have a comparison even with an earlier game this season as well, just to show folks how dominating this particular win was versus Utah. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Tom.
Now we'll say this, Craig Smith, the Utah coach, a very likable guy. And by the way, everybody likes you when they're beating you, but Coach Smith, he had just great things to say about Kelvin and the Houston Cougar program and our team. Just, I think he was a little impressed himself by what we did to his team.
Yeah, no kidding. How about you, Bill, for the two games from a player's perspective?
Yeah, Central Florida, the one thing that I recall, and you're going to have to forgive me because my notes seem to have evaded me. Oh, and by the way, just as kind of a preamble, I hope the lisp from last week is gone. I'm blaming that entirely on the AI editing, and of course, that would fall squarely on your head, Steve. So you're 100% responsible for that lisp. Hopefully, that's entirely gone and we'll never hear it again. But
no, I can confirm it's still there. I can hear it right now.
Oh God. Well, in that case, maybe maybe I should just jump off. Okay, well, we'll I guess make the best of it. Yeah, people were texting me, and I was on a couple group texts, and kind of freaking out at halftime when we were down 38-30. And yeah, one of the stats that I recall was that Cryer and Sharp, I believe, were a combined 4 of 15 from the field in the first half and 1 of 10 from three. And I said to them, look, this isn't the end of the world. It's not that big a deal. We're down 8. We can come back from 8 easily. It wasn't easy, but we can come back from 8. We just got no production from our backcourt in the first half, and so I thought we'd be okay. I did not think it would come down to a out of bounds play with 3.2 seconds left, but obviously glad we got the win. We had a few guys that Tugler had a presence at the end of the game, but again only played 12 minutes. Cryer didn't have, as I mentioned, didn't have a great shooting game, and Arsenault off the bench. It just didn't seem like he kind of had his head in the game and was nearly as aggressive as he could be, and ended up only playing 10 minutes. Wilson played great. Javier played great, and obviously, we figured out that we were not necessarily bigger inside, but certainly stronger. And Roberts, Roberts just took control and ended up having 21 and 9. It's just a great, but 16 and 10 for Francis in 25 minutes is outstanding as well. And so we really got some great production out of our 3 big guys. And the other thing, and I agree that there were definitely some questionable whistles, but it also benefited us that UCF had some issues hitting free throws down the stretch of that game. So good to get out with a win. As Iowa State knows, you're not going to win everything, and if you don't come in prepared to play and play well, you can lose. Just because the SEC is the top-rated conference doesn't mean that the Big 12 isn't still damn competitive and has some great games. So, yeah, that's what I've got on UCF. Utah, yeah, 70-36. I predicted a 40-point win, and Some people thought I was nuts for predicting that. Quite honestly, had Sharp played, could have been 50.
Yeah.
And Tom, you mentioned that Calvin started pulling everyone. Yeah, it was close to 8 minutes left when he started pulling everyone. So, I mean, this game could have been much, much uglier. This was a game where athleticism and aggressiveness just dominated, and Utah is just not an exceptionally athletic team. And as we had a battle with them last year, but this clearly was not the same Utah team. They don't have the shooters that they had last year.
Yeah.
They didn't have the height. West Virginia out rebounded us 36-33, which was pointed out to me as well. And there's a pretty simple explanation for that. If you don't shoot the ball, it's hard for the opponents to get rebounds. They committed, and Steve, I know you'll get into this. They committed 26 turnovers, 14 in the first half. Coming into the game, they were number 11 in the country in turnover margin. Either of you know where they are after the game yesterday?
No. What are they at now?
29.
Wow.
They dropped from 11 to 29 in turnover margin. That
Based on one game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's, you don't see teams turn the ball over 29 times. And that's because they seem to be uncomfortable a lot of times handling the ball. They wanted to get rid of it. Our pressure defense just intimidated them, quite honestly. The bench shooting, and I mean Malik and Mercy in particular wasn't good. 2 of 16, 0 of 5 from 3. Tugler was limited again by foul trouble, but he did have 3 steals. And we had, as a team, 19 steals and 11 blocks, which is A, unbelievable, but B, they only had 3 steals and 1 block, which again represents the athleticism and just the supremely better defense that we play. And Wilson, despite shooting poorly, did have 4 assists, 5 steals, and led us with 7 boards. This was, quite honestly, just a matter of Utah not being in the same class that we're in, and the score dictated that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the analytics actually support that as well. Though we didn't hit our norms for the season, defense still won the day for us, along with, as you guys had highlighted, our 2 bigs in Roberts and Francis dominating inside in the 69-68 win. On offense, we just could not shake free for any good looks on threes, shooting an abysmal 18.75% from three-point range this game, where UCF, quite honestly, had been terrible all season defending the arc. Thankfully, inside the paint, Francis had his best game of his career at UH, 16 points, 4 or 5 from the field with the 10 rebounds, as you guys had highlighted. And Juwan just had his way inside as well for those 21 points and 9 rebounds. And, of course, the game winner down low while double teamed, I'll add, with 1.1 second left. On defense, we just challenged UCF on every shot and kept their shooting percentages slightly below their averages while forcing turnovers on almost 20% of their possessions. We were definitely UCF's highlighted game of the season, and they were focused and motivated the whole 48 minutes. So I'm ecstatic that we were able to win it in the way we did, because this team really needed a game like this to demonstrate to themselves that they could close out close games on the road. Now, the game versus Utah was the exact opposite. This game was over, quite honestly, before the half when we led 41-17. On offense, we were able to leverage our stellar ball movement and inside-outside bounce against a decent D in Utah. And they were actually top 20 from 2-point percentage D. We did not end up shooting well for the game, but I'm not going to go into the advanced analytics because, as you guys had highlighted, this was a game where Sharp didn't play and no regular starter played more than 25 minutes. Everyone, and I mean everyone, got in for extended minutes. On defense, this was a crazy, scary night for future opponents and showing how well connected we are now on that side of the ball. Looking at statistics, Utah ended up at 36% effective field goal percentage, with UH smothering them inside to an unbelievable 31% from 2-point range, blocking their shot on over 42% of their attempts, which is just shocking. And just to suffocate them some more, we forced turnovers on over 43% of Utah's possessions with 19 steals, as you guys had highlighted. And to give all the fans a sense of how dominating defensively Houston was, you can go back to our Louisiana game earlier in the season where they were what we would say the lowest KenPom team on our schedule this year coming in to the game. And they were at 324, I believe. And even they shot effective field goal percentage 39% for the game to Utah's 36. And Utah's a Big 12 team, folks. So the Cougars are now a perfect 7-0 in conference with sole possession of number 1 in the standings of the Big 12. So let's review one key game from atop the leaderboard of the Big 12 as well, as West Virginia beat Iowa State 64-57 at home this past Saturday. Bill, what's your soundbite from a player's perspective in that West Virginia and ISU game?
Well, West Virginia is a very good defensive team, and that's what it took. It took a great defensive effort to shut down ISU. ISU, and this I think is maybe the only stat to look at for that game. Practically, ISU shot 1 of 17, 6% from three. Excuse me, that's the difference in the game. ISU had 10 more boards, but 5 more. Both teams shot poorly from the outside, and the Big 12. If you're not ready to play every night and you don't come out with your A game, that's what's bound to happen. And West Virginia is a much better team than they've been in the past. Certainly better than last year, and they took advantage of ISU's poor shooting.
Yeah, well said. How about you, Tom, from a coach's perspective on the West Virginia ISU game?
I will say this. I was mildly surprised that Iowa State lost, even though the game was played in Morgantown. They only scored 57 points. At first thought you'd say, well, maybe they're missing Momcilovic. Well, they didn't miss him when they scored 108 the next game when they played UCF. It does thin their bench, though, because now you have to, I believe it's Curtis Jones. He was coming off the bench. Now he's inserted in the starting lineup. So they have a really good starting 5. I just don't think their bench is it's a thin bench for Iowa State. So we'll see how they hold up until Momcilovic comes back. But that could be a ways away, too.
Oh, really?
And then, of course, West Virginia has the big win at home. And then they immediately come back and lose at home to Arizona State.
Shocking.
Go figure. How does that happen? Well, like Bill said, if you don't come ready to play, your teams are good enough in this league to get you beat. So, yeah, I was mildly surprised at Iowa State losing that game. Now, I was happy they lost.
Yeah, no kidding.
Don't get me wrong on that. I'm glad they got beat. They need a few more losses.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about West Virginia being sneaky good the last 2 weeks, and they proved it yet again with this win over Iowa State. From an analytics perspective, the highlight was indeed that West Virginia's D stood tall and limiting ISU's number 10 adjusted efficiency offense to sub 45% from the game, and is, Bill, you mentioned, under 6% from three-point range. But additionally, West Virginia also forced Iowa State to turn the ball over on 21% of their possessions. And here's the interesting stat of the day. All 21% of those turnovers were on steals. So I don't think I've ever seen that stat in that fashion before. So West Virginia got back into the AP poll this week after that win. Of course, we don't want to go into the game, as you guys had highlighted, where they lost subsequently at home to ASU. But that's life in the Big 12. So now we move on to 2 more games this coming week for Houston. Tough games at Kansas and then at the aforementioned West Virginia. Tom, what's your coach's take on the next 2 games?
Kansas, it's hard to tell. It seems like they got some things fixed after they had that loss to West Virginia. At home, they also have another loss. I think it was Iowa State. I think already Iowa State on the road. And then they just killed UCF. They go to UCF in Orlando, and they killed them by about 50-something points. So sometimes it's kind of hard to tell what kind of Kansas team you're going to get. I think some of their pieces don't fit. You have AJ Storr really hasn't, meshed. You have Rylan Griffin who really hasn't meshed. And you're talking about Rylan Griffin. You're talking about one of the best 3-point shooters around. You're talking about AJ Storr, one of the best scorers in the Big Ten, coming from Wisconsin.
Yep.
They're coming in. They're playing a little bit, but I don't know what's going on. But they just don't seem to mesh very well. They were probably the most highly touted portal guys coming in.
Yeah.
And then the least touted ones, you have Zeke Mayo from South Dakota State. He's probably the biggest portal addition for them. He seems to pretty much gel with the big three for Kansas. And then you have the more defensive oriented guard. I think his name is Shaquille Moore I think he's a transfer from Mississippi State. He's more of a defense oriented guard, and they've been playing him quite a bit. I think he might even be starting, but we'll see. It's Fog Allen, it's Fog Allen Fieldhouse, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, and all that kind of crap. Officials, we'll see. I think a lot of the way the game is going to go, I think, is going to be determined by the whistle. What kind of game is called? If we get in foul trouble, especially like JoJo, he gets in foul trouble, or LJ or E-Man, it could be tough for us.
Yeah,
I am predicting a win though.
Are you? Wow!
We come out with a 79-78 win.
That's not like you to be predicted wins on the road against.
I know. I'm usually more pessimistic than I'm happy when we win.
Yeah.
But this time I'm thinking we came out with a win. I believe we're the tougher team than Kansas is. But like I said against UCF, it seems like when the Houston Cougars come to town, I mean, everybody gears up for us.
Yeah,
it's hard to believe. Just our second year in the league, and it's like we're the bullies in the league, and you got a blue blood like Kansas, but it just seems like teams gear up for us. And here's the deal. Teams know that if they don't come out and they don't fight, they're going to get embarrassed.
Yeah.
And that brings out the best in teams. And Utah found out that out the other night. And then you got West Virginia. Kind of hard to talk about West Virginia until we get past Kansas. Another game on the road, played in Morgantown. Students are back. I'm sure it's going to be a crazy environment. I think we come out with a hard-earned victory in that one too, and it'll bring us to 9-0. If we start 9-0, unbelievable, and with the competition we're playing.
Yeah, that would be pretty crazy.
Tom, where are the 5 conference losses that you've predicted coming from?
Oh, I know. I had us going 6-4 on the road and 9-1 at home. But for the record, Bill, I will say this: I'm glad I'm wrong. We'll be wrong. I'm rooting for myself to be wrong.
There you go. I
am too.
Love it. Okay, how about you, Bill, from a player's perspective with the 2 games?
Okay, well, Kansas, Saturday at 5:30 on ESPN. They're 14-4. They're 5-2 in conference. They lost at home to West Virginia, as was mentioned. They got smoked at Iowa State. Probably their best win this season was a close win over Duke, but that was early. And they're top 10, Ken Palm. They're really typically they're a really good offensive team, and their defense isn't bad. They're a defensive team this year, and I know you'll talk about that, Steve. But I'm sure definitely top 5 in Ken Palm defensively, and so that's what we're in for. They were a bit of a deeper team this year than they were last year, where they had injuries, and Self had said that he needed to go out and recruit more and better players. But as it turns out, well, number one, their forward, KJ Adams, their senior forward, He separated his shoulder versus Iowa State. He is out, and he will be out for the U of H game. So KJ Adams will not be playing. And they've actually been playing their starters a ton of minutes over the last few games. So the depth has all of a sudden shrunk for Kansas losing Adams. And I'll mention a few players. You can't talk about Kansas without mentioning Hunter Dickinson, the All-American 7'2" center. He's at 16 points and 10 boards, 53% from the field. He kind of does it all. And Tom, you mentioned Zeke Mayo. He's the only other double-digit scorer on the team, and he's averaging 15 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, couple turnovers, 38% from 3. So he can score in a variety of ways. He's a really good player. I like him. And then the other big name is DeJuan Harris, their senior 6'2" point guard. And he may have been able to go to the NBA last year, is probably a little questionable, but he returned and he's scoring. I mean, he's close to 10 points, 9-7, 5.5 assists, but 44% from the field. He can shoot, but he's not a great shooter. I mentioned Adams is out. Storr, I have no problem with him not having a great season or at least stepping up as much as he could. You talk to anybody from the University of Wisconsin, uh, he was a huge dividing factor last year. He was negotiating with Kansas the entire year on his NIL money. He was talking about it to everyone on the Wisconsin team, and there were not too many people that were all that sad to see him leave. So we'll see what he brings to the table. And then the one other guy is Flory Badunga, the 6'9" forward, excuse me, from the Congo. He was Kansas's big recruit, 5-star. He chose Kansas over Auburn, and he's been starting now that KJ Adams is out. Like I said, they've only got 2 10-plus point scorers, but all that I mentioned can score in double figures. All the other players could score in double figures. They've been playing great D, and what we're going to need to do is, A, we're going to need to move the ball really well. B, we're going to have to out-physical them inside, which unfortunately in Fog Allen could lead to a lot of fouls called against us.
Yeah.
Tugler, above all else, needs to avoid fouls if possible.
Yeah.
And our shooters just need to be comfortable and shoot. And I see a really tight game, but it's Fog Allen, it's Kansas, and as you alluded to, Tom, it's probably also the officials. A lot to overcome. This is the one that I thought was all along was the loss. So I'm not gonna. As much as I could see us winning, I think all those factors are going to lead to a 69-65 Kansas win.
Okay.
So,
hey guys, before you leave the discussion on Kansas, it'll be interesting to see what Kelvin does with Hunter Dickinson as far as monstering the post. It'll be interesting to see how we do that because Dickinson's like 7'2". He's not a bad passer.
Yeah.
I mean, he will pass the ball. He's not a black hole, so he will pass it every now and then. So it'll be interesting to see how we do against Dickinson. I know last year when we played him at Fog Allen, he killed us.
Yeah.
He was just
with
getting
his passing.
Yeah, with his passing.
Great post position. And, our monster it just wasn't good. I mean, they just kind of carved us up in that game. But as we all know, when they came back and played us again, but it was a totally different story. What did we win that game by? 30, something like that, 30 points or so. But so it'll be interesting. A year experience playing Dickinson. A lot of the same Kansas players. They don't have Furphy. He's gone. He hurt us last year in that first game. They don't have Kevin McCullough. And who else did they lose? I can't remember. But
the shooter off the bench.
It'll be interesting to see how Kelvin and staff go about defending Dickinson. I don't think we'll go one-on-one in the post, but you never know.
I mean, I think we're a little bit different with a healthy Tugler as well. He's much quicker at making up ground, right? Especially after doubling in the post if need be. I think.
And JVA got hurt last year at Fog
Yeah.
Allen early in that. He didn't play a whole lot. LJ had a really good shooting game, but he was
Second
the only.
half, kind of when it
Yeah,
was out of
yeah,
hand.
yeah. He was the only one that kept us. That was a game where Jamal Shed missed that layup. I think he was only going for a dunk, or he gets the back iron on the layup. Do you guys remember that?
I do.
And by the way, I like Craig Smith, the Utah coach, but it's Shed and not Sheed, like he said in the press conference. It's like I think everybody knows it's Shed.
Well, Tom, I think the answer to neutralizing Dickinson is not only quite simple but quite obvious after the game at Fertitta last year.
Let me
Just
guess.
send in Sed to beat him up.
Yeah. Hey, you never know. We might see Sed for a minute or two, especially if we get in foul trouble. We'll probably definitely see him. Just don't get Sed on the free throw line. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, Bill, how about the West Virginia game?
Yeah, number 23 West Virginia, Wednesday at 6:00, and it's unfortunately we're stuck on ESPN Plus, which stinks. But in a very recent game against them, I thought we'd win big playing them at home. We came away with a 70-54 win, 16-point win. This could have been a bigger win, but West Virginia, who's really not a good outside shooting team, shot the ball fairly well versus our defense. Juwan in that game went nuts inside for 22. LJ shot well, scored 18, and Uzan, was Uzan. He did everything, and Sharp played a solid game also. So it was a good win. They had a couple guys that hit some shots, but we were the better team. They just happened to hit shots and keep the game closer than I thought it would have been. I hate the term, and it's used all the time now, head of the snake. But in this case, it's actually quite applicable. Javon Small, he hit shots against us. He was 3 of 5 from 3. He dished out 8 assists. He only committed 1 turnover in the game at Fertitta. He is outstanding. He's their point guard. He creates turnovers. He just does it all. And so not to say that he is West Virginia, but he is their superior player. Yeah, transferred in from Oklahoma State, and he's leading everything in their turnaround from last year. The guy that I was beginning to allude to that hit some shots against us and scored 8 straight in the second half to when they cut the lead to 3 was Amani Hansberry, and he's kind of stepped up as coach's son Tucker DeVries has been absent, has been hurt, and doesn't look like he's going to. Well, we're still 2 games away, so he could be back, but it doesn't look like he will. And Hansberry never really up until us wasn't a huge offensive threat, but he's been shooting the ball a lot more, and I think that's in the absence of DeVries because they really don't have a ton of offense on that team. Toby Akani, Jonathan Powell, they can hit some open shots if they're completely uncovered, but they're not great threats shooting. And West Virginia's just far more of a defensive team than they are a good shooting team. They've also been, and Tom, you mentioned it, they've been really schizophrenic lately. They go in and they beat ISU after the loss to us, and then they turn around at home and lose to Arizona State by 8. So they're they're a good defense. They're not a good offensive team. They're a okay offensive team, and Small scores a ton of points for them. But they're a much better defensive team. The thing is, if their defense is good but not great, they can be susceptible to other teams that are playing well. We'll get a team somewhere in the middle of the ISU win and the ASU loss. I still think that they're not at our level and that we're a bad matchup for them. If we hound Small, we make him get rid of the ball early, get a hand in their shooters' faces, rebound, we'll be just fine coming off of Kansas, and I have us winning 69-59.
Okay. I mean, looking at it from an analytics perspective, Kansas first up this year is very different from what we've really historically known this program for, where they've been elite offensively and then excellent on D. They're number 7 now in KenPom, 14-4 with a bunch of new kids joining the team from the portal. KU is 32 in adjusted offensive efficiency and number 4 in adjusted defensive efficiency, where we're now 13th in adjusted offensive efficiency and number 1 in adjusted defensive efficiency. So it's basically two defensive heavyweights battling it out this Saturday. KU is heavily 2-point dependent on offense this season, ranking number 3 in 2-point distribution of points this season at 61% of their offense. That's very, very heavily weighted in that direction. But surprisingly, they don't shoot exceptionally well, number 67 in effective field goal percentage and 181st from 3-point range, and hence their heavy emphasis on 2-point shooting. But even from there, they're decent at 55.3% from 2-point range, ranking 58th in the country based on KenPom. On D is where this KU team has been strong this year, ranking number 6 in effective field goal percentage D, number 10 from 3-point range, and number 6 from 2-point range in KenPom. They still don't force a lot of turnovers, but where they've really upped things on defense this season is in blocking more shots. And this is where that new freshman comes in, making the difference. Flory Bidunga. He's really up that blocking shots stat from previous seasons. Key for UH is going to be getting a healthy, rested Sharp back and continuing our recent ball movement and balance on offense. While on D, as you had highlighted, Bill, keeping Tugler out of foul trouble and shutting down the inside like we've been doing is going to be critical. Based on the metrics, this is supposed to be a 1-point win on the road for the Coogs based on KenPom. In my opinion, the reality is that KU will be focused. Fans will be jacked for this game. And Coach Sampson, if you can believe it, has never won in Lawrence, even going back to when he was at OU. So unfortunately, I'm also projecting this to be a loss, a 3-point 63-60 loss on the road. Then for West Virginia, we just played them, coming in at number 42 in KenPom. So again, a tricky, good team, and they'll be focused after losing to us in Houston. West Virginia is 94th in adjusted offensive efficiency, and so that's good, not too bad, and they're excellent at number 18th in adjusted defensive efficiency, roughly about the same as when we played them just a few weeks ago. West Virginia and DeVries, however, now know how to play us, having played that first game, so they should be better prepared on offense. They don't shoot the ball very well, ranking 175th in effective field goal percentage, but they try to compensate that by taking just a bunch of threes. Almost 50% of their field goal attempts are from threes. And so on D, West Virginia continues to get better and better, challenging every shot, but is especially great at defending the 3-point line, leading the conference at number 7 in 3-point field goal percentage D. So expect us to build a wall around the arc on D and continue to move the ball with a balanced inside-out distribution of shots on offense in this game. This is a game that I projected a loss a few weeks ago. Then, I don't know, West Virginia inexplicably lost at home to ASU just 2 days ago. Coach's son is still not playing, which I did not expect to be the case, so I'm waffling a little bit now. Based on the metrics, this is projected to be a 6-point win for the Cougs on the road by KenPom. Based on what I've outlined above, I'm now predicting a win in this one, but still not changing my overall prediction of number of conference losses for UH. But at this point, I've projected a closer 62-58 4-point win on the road. Now, for the topic today, in light of taking over sole possession of first in the Big 12, three old guys are going to discuss the state of the Big 12 a bit. What are some of the surprise teams so far this season after 7 games, and how impressive is it really that we're in first place at this point, given the state of the Big 12? Bill, you want to go first around the state of the Big 12 and how you're feeling about being in sole possession of first at this point?
Well, as you guys know, I'm the one that predicted us to have the fewest conference losses. So I'm not the least bit surprised that we're in first place. And Yeah, I think we'll probably at some point be tied with Iowa State, but then we're going to end up getting them at home, and I think they're going to lose again. We're going to lose again, but we're where I expected us to be, and I think we're where we're going to be throughout the remainder of the season. So no surprise there.
Okay.
Looking at the standings, quite honestly, there's really only one team that's that's faring a bit better than I thought they would. Actually, much better, even though
Yeah.
they're only 4-3 in conference, and one team that's not faring nearly as well. Obviously, it's our upcoming opponent who we've already beaten, West Virginia, who's at 4-3. That five new starters coming in this year. I thought it would take DeVries some time, and clearly it hasn't. And he's winning games without his son, who's a really good player. So West Virginia is obviously the surprise,
Yep.
and they've won 9 of 11 at home, which is very solid. They're 13-5, but they're ranked 23rd right now. If we can go into Kansas and knock off the Jayhawks, that could be two back-to-back quad one wins, which unfortunately the naysayers are crying about right now. And my response to that is, if Jordan and the Bulls had been playing in a division in a smaller conference and played no quad one teams, would that mean that they should be ranked? One guy from CBS has us ranked 18th right now. Does that mean that they should be ranked low? I mean, God, at some point the eye test has to come into it, and in any event, the one team that surprises me and surprises me a lot. This is actually the biggest surprise to me, is Cincinnati.
Yeah. Agreed.
I mean, they're 12-6 overall, so that they've got the same record as Baylor. They've got the same record as BYU overall. They're only one. They got the same record as Arizona. They're only one game worse than West Virginia. So overall, the records are pretty similar, but 2-5 in conference, and they're losing games that I did not expect
Yeah.
them to. They're playing poorly. Well, they're playing inconsistently. We'll leave it at that, but leaning toward poorly.
Yeah.
But the other teams that are at the bottom, Colorado, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, ASU, I thought ASU would be a little better. TCU, Utah, I think we all expected them to be where they are. Maybe
Yeah.
a little better for BYU, but 3-4. And the other thing is, we're not even at the midway point yet. And if you're right around 500 in the conference, there's an opportunity to turn things around and make a run. The teams
Yeah.
that are 3-4, BYU, Utah, uh, UCF is 3-4, despite their good wins and their almost win against us. One win, and they've got the same record as Baylor, same record as West Virginia. So I mean, it's a really tight conference right now, and even us at 7-0, Iowa State and Arizona are 6-1. They're on our heels. Yeah, Tech is Tech's at 5-2, as well as Kansas. I mean, the teams that you expect up toward the top are at the top, and but it's bunched right now, and so what's going on other than those two teams really doesn't surprise me, especially Cincinnati.
Okay. How about you, Tom? What's your take on the state of the conference as well as our sole possession of first place?
Yeah, I'll go first with no surprises. I'm looking at the bottom. In my predictions, I had Colorado as one of the bottom four teams. I had Oklahoma State. I had Arizona State. And yeah, I had them as bottom feeders. Then you look at the top. I had the Coogs. I had Iowa State. I had Kansas. The one team I did, I think, have in my top four, I believe, was Baylor. They're sitting at 4-3. I guess the surprise team at the top would be Arizona. I had them, I believe, fifth in the conference behind Baylor. I had
Did you really?
us. I had Iowa State. I had Kansas. I had Baylor, and I think I had
Oh, you
Arizona.
did.
And I was even talking about Arizona, maybe even finishing sixth, and Texas Tech finishing higher than them. The way Arizona was playing early in the season before conference play started. But we also have to consider we've only played 7 games. There's still 13 more games to play. It's a 16-team conference, so every team hasn't played each other at least once yet. But over the next 13 games, the wheat will separate from the chaff, and there'll probably be some small shuffling at the bottom of the standings and maybe some shuffling towards the top. But as it stands right now, it looks like it's probably I'd say a 4-team race for the championship. But like I said, there's a lot of basketball to be played. You never know about injuries. Galen quotes Kelvin by saying every team's just one rolled ankle from mediocrity, and
Yeah.
that is so true. As Coug fans, we know that from the last couple of years with all these injuries. But we do have more depth than other teams. But there's a lot of teams that, if they have a key guy go down, it could be catastrophic for them. I mean, Iowa State's playing out. They're not playing with Momcilovic. Kansas without KJ Adams for a couple of games, even though people on the KU boards are saying KJ clogs everything up in the middle. They're better offensively without him in there. There's a lot of
Yeah.
hate for him on the KU board. So,
Wow.
we'll just have to see the schedule play out. And, there's a lot of basketball to be played.
Yeah. Completely
By the
agree.
way, I should give you guys some credit or maybe take a shot at myself. I forgot to mention this, and I'm looking right at it now. I had Baylor finishing ahead of Iowa State, and you two both vehemently disagreed with me, and the two of you are, it looks like, will be absolutely right. Yeah, Baylor's the one team out of the top one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight that has a losing record on the road, and they're a bit schizophrenic, and yeah, they're clearly not at Iowa State's level. So
Yeah.
We're
congratulations to you two.
us and the Cyclones. We're the 2 toughest teams in the league from a physical and a mental standpoint, and that's what you need to win on the road. So I see us battling out for the top spot the rest of the year.
Yeah. So I actually took a look at our consensus as well as individual projections of the Big 12 from our preseason episode as well. And the top, we did have UH, KU, ISU, Arizona, Tech, and BYU in the top 8. So getting 6 of 8 is actually pretty good, pretty accurate on that front. The big 2 surprises you guys have already mentioned in West Virginia and Cincy on both sides, good and bad. So I'm not going to go into any of the details there. And I agree with you. I find it very impressive that we're actually in sole possession of first in the Big 12 after being, we're over a third of the way through the conference slate, but still very cautious since the heavy lifting on our schedule is just about to begin starting this week. But, some fans have actually stated on the forums that the Big 12 is down this season. So leading the way isn't as impressive, quote unquote, as it was last season or historically speaking, especially now with UT and OU both gone as well. So I actually took a closer look at from an analytics perspective to see if that way of thinking was accurate or not, or if it was just some anomaly with the SEC having a special season this season. And I use both Ken Palm and Bart Torvik Advanced Analytics for my deep dive here. And you know what? Yeah. So the Big 12 is currently rated number 3 amongst all the conferences this season behind the SEC and the Big 10, according to Ken Palm. And then if you look at Bart Torvik, we're number 2 behind the SEC, where historically the Big 12 has been pretty consistently number 1 over 8 of the past 10 seasons, according to both sites. But if you go deeper into the numbers, and if you look at the Big 12 as of this day, according to the metrics, Ken Palm, when you look at their median net rating, as he calls it, within the conference of plus 16.88, basically how he measures conference strength, is actually higher than last season's country leading, even with UT and OU in our conference, at 16.66 for the Big 12. Same thing with Bart Torvik, where his raw power rating for the Big 12 of 0.8747 this season is higher than even last season's country-leading 0.8662. In fact, if you comb through the previous decade's worth of data, this season's Big 12 raw strength rating score from both sites has been higher than half of the conference scores historically. So the bottom line is, as much grousing as there's been out there around the Big 12's lack of strength this season, strict number-wise, it's absolutely not the case. This season is basically amounting to what an average year for the conference has been over the past decade from an advanced analytics perspective. And you know what, guys? Guess what? After Houston wins the national title this season, that whole BS narrative around the SEC's strength this year in hoops will be long forgotten. So I'm going to leave it there.
I still will argue, and we talked about it previously, top to bottom, I believe the SEC is better. I think they're definitely better this year, but top is U of H. And in the end, I couldn't care less which conference has the better rating. I care about who's going to be cutting down the nets in San Antonio. And I'm still 100% convinced that it's going to be us. So, that's great that the Big 12 is not as strong as the SEC. And I'm 100% behind that. I've watched enough teams from both conferences to, using my eye test, I think without question the SEC top to bottom is better. But I absolutely do not care. It's who's going to win.
Yeah.
Who's going to win it all? And I am convinced it's going to be U of H.
Yeah, we hope so. So that's it for our 40th episode of the No Conference for Old Men podcast. Hope you all enjoyed it. And again, would really appreciate it if folks would follow, subscribe, or collect our podcast, depending on your podcast platform of choice. We are also available via the Republic of Football podcast feed from the folks at Dave Campbell's Texas Football as the only basketball-centric podcast, or at the GoCoogs.com website for those that prefer to digest the content that way. We appreciate the continued support from all. Also, please give us a follow on our Twitter account, No Conference for Old Men. Thank you all again for listening, and be on the lookout next week to download and listen as our next episode drops. Take care, everyone.